Conversion therapy has been in the news lately, and a Colorado law, which claims to ban the practice, has been challenged at the Supreme Court. So what even is this? Well, conversion therapy is a real thing, though it was previously mostly called gay conversion therapy. Back in decades past, people would attempt various interventions to make their gay kids straight. I haven't researched this all that much, but from what I gather, it doesn't really work. Gay boys tend to grow up to be gay men, and we've not found much of a way to change that. I do think there's an interesting side note here, though. Sam Brinton, the world's most famous luggage thief and, quote, assistant secretary for spent fuel and waste disposition under the Biden administration, claimed to be the victim of a preposterously over-the-top conversion therapy experience. Here he is talking about that experience. Quote, "My hands were bound, placed in ice, and pictures of men touching other men, just holding hands, were shown. I was supposed to associate the cold I was feeling with the images I was seeing. When the cold didn't work, heat was applied. When heat didn't work, electricity was applied. Needles were stuck into my fingers and electricity was shoved through my body as pornographic images, basically the first pornographic images I'd ever seen, were shown to me." Sam goes on to say that, quote, "They are allowed to do this to children in 41 states around the country." For the record, as you can probably imagine, no, they are not allowed to stick needles in children's fingers and apply shock therapy to children in 41 states. That's nonsense. But all the same, Sam's story, this young man who was tortured as a youth, overcame it all, graduated from MIT, became an expert in the handling of nuclear materials. Well, it was too good to ignore. He became an LGBT champion, found a place in the Biden administration, and he also founded the 50 Bills in 50 States Foundation with the goal of banning conversion therapy nationwide. Except, of course, the story was kind of nonsense. Everyone, even advocates for gay conversion bans who looked into it, realized this was completely improbable. Facts changed every time he told the story, and he would never identify the people who supposedly did these terrible things, even if it meant preventing other kids from receiving similar treatment. So yes, even the LGBTQ advocacy groups had to acknowledge it was all too good to be true. But either way, this is how these conversion therapy bills were sold to us. Don't torture gay kids, okay? Seems pretty sensible, and if you do, we have Sam's powerful cautionary tale that they might grow up to steal suitcases full of ladies' underwear or whatever, so who can argue with that? But, as seems to be the case lately, there's no LGB without the T, and the trans crowd had to get involved as well, of course. So now we have bills like Colorado's, which in fact does not ban torturing kids at all. It defines conversion therapy as, quote, "any practice or treatment by a licensed physician specializing in the practice of psychiatry that attempts or purports to change an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity." And specifically for this bill, it means this would be professional misconduct and a therapist could lose their license. So if a parent comes in and says her 8-year-old boy says he's a girl now, a therapist can't ask the obvious questions. Are you sure you're not a boy? Is this your idea or is this your parents' idea? In a sane world, obviously the therapist would do their best to help the kids become comfortable with their body exactly as it is. That's just common sense. Telling therapists they can't explore the underlying cause of this gender dysphoria is obviously just madness. And bear in mind, Colorado, like many states, has an ongoing lawsuit where a school trans someone's kid without the parent's permission. So imagine this is you. Maybe you think the school pressured your child. Peer pressure, or a bullying or manipulative teacher. The teacher isn't a licensed therapist, so they don't have to worry about any particular professional consequences for making your kid think they're trans. But if you take that kid to a therapist, even if the therapist agrees that your child was coerced, they can't say a word. Under this law, they're forbidden from acting according to their conscience, or they'll lose that license. Colorado's 100% Democratic legislature is doing everything in their power to turn the place into a transgender dystopian nightmare. House Bill 251312 says, quote, "when making child custody decisions and determining the best interest of a child for purposes of parenting time, a court shall consider dead naming and misgendering." So yeah, your kid comes home from school saying there's some preposterous new gender. You better affirm that gender or you might find yourself unable to see your kids in the future. And by the way, this is the very same state who spent a decade hassling Masterpiece Cakes for refusing to bake a gay wedding cake and then a transgender cake on religious grounds. He beat them at the Supreme Court, and they turned around and filed an almost identical case just to punish him some more. As you can imagine, Supreme Court cases are not cheap. He says it nearly bankrupted him and closed down his business. And by the way, when I was researching this, I came across this sneering response to the loss of the case by the ACLU. Quote, "In Masterpiece, the bakery wins the battle but loses the war. The Supreme Court ruling still upholds that discrimination on the basis of sex, race, age, and gender is wholly unconstitutional." But of course, the baker in question didn't want to discriminate against anyone. He just didn't want to bake a cake with a message he disagreed with. Colorado, and the ACLU, I guess, appears to have a real problem with people peacefully acting according to their own conscience. They lost both cases against them, lost an almost identical case against a web designer a few years later, and it appears they'll lose this case as well. It turns out, even in Colorado, the First Amendment is still a powerful force. And that is all I've got for today. Thanks much for tuning in.